Sorry. So, this is my course, and my name is Allan Zhou, and it's about what is 3D printing. So, the definition of 3D printing. 3D printing or additive manufacturing is the process of making three-dimensional solid objects from a digital file. Um, at its most basic, 3D printing is a manufacturing process in which material is laid down like toothpaste, layer by layer, to form a three-dimensional object. As you can see in this picture, the layers are very tiny, and that's how 3D prints the stuff. And 3D printing is the opposite of subtractive manufacturing, which is like cutting out and hollowing pieces of metal or plastic. And an example of this would be like sculpting a sculpture. Additive and subtractive manufacturing are very different. One is adding while one is subtracting. Although 3D printers use a variety of materials, such as plastic or metal, they all are similar in that they can turn digital files containing your 3D model, which is like a drawing or painting, but in 3D, into physical objects, using CAD or a 3D scanner. 3D printing enables you to produce complex shapes using less material than regular manufacturing methods. So I have a question for you guys. What, how do you think the steps are to make a 3D model and to print it?
Maybe it would be like you I don't know, like you give the printer a model, but I
Yeah,
don't know how to do that. And then the printer like prints it based on your model, but like that's I don't know.
yeah, it's kind of like that. Gavin, can you use your microphone instead of drawing it? Gavin?
Program it first, like design it like on some software thing.
Yeah, and then what do?
You print it.
Okay, well, so what you do is you first need a 3D model. 3D models are also what make up video games. Games like Fortnite and Minecraft are all big 3D models. You can choose to create one or download it from a 3D library. So the next, well, you also need a CAD if you want to design your own 3D model. CAD is short for computer-aided design, which also refers to computers being used to help design processes in all sorts of industries. With CAD software, it's possible to build an entire model in an imaginary space, which lets you visualize properties like height, width, distance, material, or color before the model is used for a particular application. It's like using your imagination and bringing it to life without needing lots of materials like metal and cardboard and paper and things like that. So there are many different software tools available. There are ones used for work and some that are free. One software is Tinkercad. It is free and it works in your browser, which you don't have to install it on your computer. Tinkercad offers beginner lessons and has a built-in feature to export your model to print. We will talk more about this in later classes. So after that, you can move on to slicing your 3D model. Slicing basically means slicing up a 3D model into hundreds or thousands of layers, and when your file is sliced, you can finally print it. You can give this file to a printer with a USB SD card or Wi-Fi. Then you can print it layer by layer. This may take a long time and it may fail because sometimes your leveling is not right and things like that. I'll also talk about this in other classes. So Who invented 3D printing? The first 3D printer, which used the stereography technique, which means basically layer by layer, was created by Charles W. Hull in the mid-1980s. This method has traditionally been an expensive commercial technique, with machines costing around $100,000. But recent years have seen this become cheaper and cheaper, only costing a few $1,000s now, and some even below 1,000. In 1986, Hull also founded 3D Systems, which is a company that today still sells 3D printers that use a variety of different technologies. They range from entry-level kits to advanced commercial systems. And 3D Systems also provide on-demand part services. So, do you guys think 3D printing is considered printing?
In some way, I think in some way, because like
Yeah.
it's just printing something, but it's in 3D. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like it's like some parts, like some components, like some features are like the same. Like they both print, but it has different features. Like digital printer just like scans it and then puts the words on it. While 3D printer makes an actual object.
Yeah. So, yes, 3D printing can be considered printing.
Therefore, they are somewhat similar.
Yeah, you're right.
Is more pro.
Wait, is the question why they're similar or how they're different?
No, is it considered like printing on a paper? So yes, 3D printer can be considered printing. The definitions of printing are about the production of printed matter, like photographs or like Word documents, but none of these definitions really fits 3D printing. Although 3D printing is kind of like traditional printing, in which a layer of material like ink is used, but usually when you're using a digital printer, it's so thin that you can barely see the height. And what 3D printing does, it basically extends it into 3D and with multiple layers instead of only one layer on a paper. And yeah. Examples of 3D printing. 3D um, a 3D printer includes many forms of technologies and materials, as 3D printing is being used in almost all industries you can think of. Before 3D printing was only suitable for prototyping and a one-time use in manufacturing, but now it is rapidly transforming into a production technology. You can use it to design a car or some things like that. And most of the current demand for 3D printing is in industrial nature. According to a human research and consulting forecasts, the global 3D printing market is to reach $41 billion by 2026. And some examples of these things are consumer products like eyewear, footwear, design, furniture, industrial products, dental products, prosthetics, architectural scale models, and maquettes, reconstructing fossils, and replicating ancient artifacts. Rapid prototyping and rapid manufacturing. Companies have used 3D printers in their design process to create prototypes since the late 1970s. Using 3D printers for these purposes is called rapid prototyping. Rapid prototyping is the making of a physical part, model, or assembly using 3D computer-aided design. For example, you can design a couch or cup in CAD in a day and have it in your hands in a week. Rapid prototyping is very fast and very cheap. From idea to 3D model to holding a prototype in your hands is a matter of days instead of weeks. Versions are easier and cheaper to make, and you don't need expensive molds or tools. Besides rapid prototyping, 3D printing is also used for rapid manufacturing. Rapid manufacturing is a new method of manufacturing where businesses use 3D printers for small batch custom manufacturing. Now I'll talk about 3D printing in the real world. Like how is 3D printing used and how is it helpful? So, what do you guys think? How can 3D printing be used in the real world?
I think I don't know. I remember somebody saying this. I don't know if it was here or coach said it or you said it, Alan, but like you can use it to prototype something if you're making like I don't know, like some kind of gadget that's gonna help with something. You can use 3D printing to print it, so you don't have to actually use the metal and the materials to do a demo.
Well, you
So-
can experiment with it, and make your models, and yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, like that, like what Jay said, you don't have to like waste metal or waste stuff like that.
You could
Yeah.
build replacement.
Yeah, that also is true. So, they can be used in many different industries. So one is in automotive. So car manufacturing has been using 3D printing for a long time. They're printing spare parts, tools, jigs, and fixtures, and also end-use parts. 3D printing has also enabled them to do on-demand manufacturing, which means which has led to lower stock levels and shortened design and production cycles. So there are many automotive enthusiasts all over the world who use 3D printed parts to restore old cars. Like someone in Australia brought back a very old car by printing parts that were out of production for decades. And also it is used in construction, footwear, and eyewear. So do you guys think it is possible to print a building using a
No,
3D
no, I
printer?
don't think.
Yeah, you could.
As long as
Maybe
it's
you can
really
print
hard
a-
material and it's big enough.
And
Alright,
maybe you can print a model of a building. Maybe you can print a model of a building.
You could print a small building.
No, maybe you could like print out the parts and then slowly assemble them into time.
No, you can actually print a whole real life-size building somewhere. And 3D printed houses are already commercially available and you could maybe buy one. So some companies print parts outside of the places and others do it right where the house is supposed to be placed. So in footwear, Adidas has been starting to do something called the 4D range, which has a fully printed 3D midsole and is being printed in very large volumes. Like in 2018, they printed already 100,000 midsoles and even expect to print a lot more in 2019. So the total market of 3D printed footwear is also forecasted to reach $5.9 billion. As you can see in this picture, this whole green part is all 3D printed for shoes. And furthermore, in eyewear, the market of 3D printed eyewear is also to reach 3.4 billion by 2024. 3D printing is very suitable for eyewear because frames for individuals are easy to process in the end. But did you guys also know that it is possible to print 3D lenses? Traditional glass lenses don't start out thin and light. They come from a larger block of glass called a blank, and 80% of that goes to waste. And think about it. There's lots of people who wear glasses, and most likely your parents wear glasses, and they really often need to get a new pair if their eyes are getting worse. And 80% of that is a lot to waste. But however, 3D printing has advanced enough to allow you to print custom ones for people, and that allows you to save lots of materials because you only need to print it once.
Wait, so Alan, so the 3D printers can print like prescription lenses?
Yeah, it custom prints it for you.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. So also in healthcare, over the last decade, more than 100,000 hip replacements have been 3D printed. Like in this picture, this is the 3D printed hip replacement here. This was designed by a doctor named Guido Grappolio, and It is a three-dimensional hexagonal cell structure that imitates the tribacular bones. Some of the first delta TT implants are still running strong over a decade later in patients. Another 3D printed healthcare component that does a very good job is the hearing aid. Nearly every hearing aid in the last 17 years has been 3D printed, thanks to two companies named Materialize and Phonic. Phonic developed a rapid shell modeling in 2001. Prior to this, making one hearing aid required very laborious steps involving hand sculpting and mold making. And the results were often ill-fitting, which means like they didn't fit well. But with RSM, which is just rapid shell modeling in short, a technician only needs to use a silicone, which is like a mold of it, to make an impression of the ear canal. That impression is then 3D scanned, and after some minor tweaking, the model can be 3D printed. Then the electronics are added and it's shipped. This process saves lots of money and it allows to print lots of custom hearing aids each year. So education. Um, Educators and students have been using 3D printers in the classroom. 3D printing allows students to see their ideas in fast and affordable way. While these 3D printing printers are fairly new, universities have also been using 3D printers. There are many educational courses that you can take with 3D printing. Universities offer courses on things that are similar to 3D printing, like CAD and 3D design, which can be applied to 3D printing. There are specializations in 3D printing that one can attain through architecture or industrial design. These printed prototypes are also very common in the arts, animation, and fashion studies. So, conclusion. Uh, Among the items made with 3D printers are shoe designs, furniture, wax castings for making jewelry, tools, tripods, gifts, novelty items, and toys. Printed electronics is a set of printing methods that also enable electronic devices or circuitry to be printed on flexible materials, such as labels, fabrics, cardboard, by application or electronic optical links. This provides a very low-cost fabrication of low-performance devices. Printed electronics is beginning to be combined with 3D printing, allowing for the 3D printer, anyways, so food also helps 3D printers in a way. Like you can print food like chocolate. The French Culinary Institute has also been using an open source 3D printer to prepare food. There are so many possibilities with 3D printers, and these 3D printers can completely change your lives in years. So, um, so now, what do you guys think of 3D printing? And yeah, what are your thoughts?
Is very pro.
I have a question. What is like the material of 3D printing again?
Well, you can use plastic, metals, and you can also print some foods like chocolate. Like, I'll tell you more about materials now. Let me show
I
you
have
the
a
next.
question.
Yeah, what?
The string or whatever, what's the thing that's in the 3D printer?
The plastic, or like the material is the plastic or metal or yeah.
And
So
and before we actually started, and the next section, I just want to add some more comments here. Is for fun, just for fun. So previously, Adam showed us that there are so many, in healthcare, in automobile, and so many industry we can use 3D printing, and yeah, and for the kids, the 3D printer can also print your the dolls, right? The doll. Use your picture. It's pretty much looks like a real you. And also another cool stuff. the 3D printer, I have seen some people use it to print a gun. So, you know, it's a gun, it's a highly restricted stuff, right? So, but with 3D printer, it's a sort of, you know, people can easily make a gun at home, something. So it has good part.
Oh
but
yeah, wait, I think my mom told me about this,
Yeah.
or someone told me about this. People are printing 3D guns at home.
Yeah, it really works. And so it's you know, 3D printer is good for everyone, even the bad guy get benefited. So it really depends on who's gonna use it. But I would suggest you guys, before the bad guy really know how to use a 3D printer, so you guys definitely should know how to use 3D printer first. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Okay, so what do you guys think is a 3D printer?
Right.
It's a printer that prints multiple layers of material to make it 3D.
Yeah, okay, so that's pretty much right. So so from metal to plastic or even chocolate, this gives life to lots of different projects. Many people can print a variety of things at home. Like, for example, if you wanted to print a dog, you can print it, or if you wanted to fix your like house or something, you can print a part for that. And there isn't just one type of 3D printer. There are a lot of different types and different printing techniques. So, as I said before, you will need a 3D file, and then you will also have to choose the 3D printing technology you need for your project. Each material has its properties, and your choice will depend on what you need for your project. Do you need a rapid prototype or an end-use product? An end-use product is basically a product that like you're going to use every day at home. And so, does your object have to be heat resistant, flexible, or resistant to stress? After all this is, your 3D design will be sent to a 3D printer. So, but what are the different 3D printers on the market and how do they work? So, first we'll talk about the 3D printing parts. So, the controller board is the first one. It also is referred to as the motherboard or mainboard. It is like the brain of the 3D printer. Um, it's the one responsible for the core operations, and it's like your brain telling our bodies what to do. But instead of that, it directs the motion components based on commands sent from a computer and interpreting input from the sensors. The controller board's quality has a major effect on overall performance of the 3D printer. Even a machine made of high-end parts from top to bottom won't be able to print well if the controller board is crap. Next is the filament, which is the material used to print objects on a 3D printer. It's the equivalent of the ink used on a regular office 2D printer. The frame, moving on, the frame is like the chassis of the 3D printer. It's like our skeleton system that holds our body together. But instead it holds the components for the 3D printer together and is responsible for the stability and durability of the machine. Most of the time, 3D printer frames are either made of metal, but in the early days, they're often made of wood, which made the 3D printers really weak. So 3D printers with a metal frame are the most recommended because they are more stable and more durable. In addition, the print bed is where the extruder deposits the filament to form a solid object. The bed is like the construction site where construction workers work. Workers will be building a shop or a house. It is like where the ink meets the paper for a 2D print. Finally, the print head or the extruder is the component that turns the filament into a model. It lays down the material on the print bed at a very high temperature. It's also separated by two sections, a cold end and a hot end. The cold end clamps the filament and pushes it down to the hot end while the hot end, which ends with a nozzle, melts the filament and deposits it onto the platform. So as you can see in this picture, this is the extruder which like deposits the material. This is the print bed where it'll print your thing, and this is the material used, but this can be swapped out for metal or other things like that. And so now we'll be moving on to the different 3D printers. So one of them is the plastic 3D printers, and plastic 3D printers also have two different ways of printing. One is selective laser sintering, or SLS. This 3D printing technique is perfect to create complex forms or interlocking parts. So how does an SLS printer work? This plastic 3D printing technique creates 3D printed objects by solidifying the powder layer by layer. The power bed is preheated, and so a laser will solidify the powder according to the 3D file. This method isn't seen commonly because it's more expensive, and so the more common one that most people have, and this is the type of 3D printer I have, is called the deposition modeling, or FDM. This additive manufacturing technique is used by hobbyists and in education. Using one or two print heads, the 3D machine allows the deposition of 3D printing materials. Just like I said earlier, it goes layer by layer down, and this 3D printer works by the material being melted and extruded through a nozzle to print like a cross section of an object each layer at a time. So next is metal 3D printers. Direct metal laser sintering, or DMLS. 3D printers for the DMLS technology create parts additively by solidifying fine metal powder particles to fuse them. It is basically like the SLS process we saw before, but the significant difference is the temperature. So, and another one of these ways is called selective laser melting. This method creates parts by fusing them with a laser, and this process, like your other techniques, will be created layer by layer, just like the plastic ones. So there's also multicolor printers, which is basically it can print two different colors at the same time. So you can have different colors on your build, like as you can see in these pictures. So and then 3D printing materials. So what do you guys think can be used as a material for 3D printer?
Plastic.
Yeah, there's a lot more. Like I said before, there's
Could you use string?
not string, but you can use other things like I mentioned before. There's metal, chocolates.
Plastic.
Wait, so if you put metal into the thing, will it like print your thing in there?
No, like I mentioned before, there's different ways of printing it, and
Oh,
you'd have to buy like a specific 3D printing, like that prints metal.
Is there like
I
a,
see.
is there a separate like chocolate printer or a separate metal printer?
Yeah, there's like you need because it's like different ways to print it. So if you wanted to print metal, you'd have to buy like a metal 3D printer. And so when you're deciding what 3D printing materials you should choose, you have to factor in application, function, or design. 3D printing materials come in many different forms. Most consumer 3D printed products are made from plastics. In plastic that's named acrylonitrile sintron is the plastic used in Legos. It's tough, non-toxic, and retains its color well. It also is easily shaped as it melts, so it's easy to mass produce. Another type of plastic is called polylactic acid, which is made from biological materials such as cornstarch or sugarcane. It is tough but it's not as heat tolerant as ABS, which is the material used in Legos. It works well for manufacturing 3D printing and painted miniatures. Like if you wanted to print a dog, this material would be good for that. Another material named polyethylene terephthalate is similar to the other material, but it is helpful for if you want to print something that's going to be used for food. So it's good for printing utensils, cups, water bottles, and other things that come in contact with food, and it won't kill you if you use it. So then you have another material is wood filament. Despite this name, these printer filaments are not made of wood, but they're using very fine wood particles that are combined with PLA, which is a plastic, and glue, which binds them together. This material is often used for sculptures and like wood-like carvings. Another material, and the final one, is ceramics, which uses particles of clay combined with minerals and water. And ceramic 3D prints can be turned into solid pottery using clay. These are often used for art projects, tableware, and dental implants. There are more materials are some metal filaments, and however, even though these may be named metal, it won't be as heavy and as strong as solid metal and it won't weigh as much. So these metal particles are bound by plastic and glue and will not conduct electricity. These are good for printing metal sculptures and figurines. Another one is carbon fiber filaments, which is helpful for its low weight and it's very strong. So this is good for things that need to be very strong but also light at the same time. There are also very flexible filaments. These are like rubber and it helps you make things like gloves. Flexible filaments work for producing like things that you can wear, like a dress or even a phone cover.
What about a rubber duck?
Yeah, a rubber duck works too. So the last and final one would be 3D printing filaments that work with wires and circuits. These are great for printing things like touch buttons, wearable electronics, and stuff like that. So finally, which 3D printer should you buy?
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
Could you go to the last line? Like, what do you use to print like food or like chocolate?
Oh, I didn't mention that one, but you'd have to. They're still in like beta, so like they're not very ready for public use yet. But like you can buy them on some websites, and they give you like chocolate, and they heat it up, and you can print like anything you really want with it. But it's not ready to be used yet, so like they're still developing it and stuff. And so which 3D printer should you buy? First, you would have to identify what your budget is. 3D printers are very expensive, some from a couple hundred of dollars to tens of thousands of dollars. What size prints do you need to make? Depending on what you need, prints depend on how big your 3D printer is. How experienced are you? You need to ask yourself, is this going to be your first printer? Have you used 3D printers before? And have you built a printer? If you don't know these things, it could be challenging at first because you would need to get your leveling right and setting up the printer right. So also, what is the intended purpose of these prints? Like what materials do you need? Okay, yeah, what materials do you need to print? Most people are going to, at least at the start, print using a vegetable-based plastic called PLA, which I mentioned before. This is basically what most starters will use. But if you're more experienced, you might need flexibility and more toughness with other materials. So depending on the materials depends on some features you might need, like a heated bed, heat resistant parts, and the temperature your hot end can safely reach. Oops. So you might, and then what is the intended purpose of your prints? You might not know what material you need, but you need to know what goal in mind you have for the prints. Like, do you want to print props or armor or RC parts for in car or a food safe, or a food safe material, or do you need like a very tough material? Some printers are great at large fast prints, but are not so good with details. How hands-on do you want to be at building or configuring this printer? Do you want to like build it like you're building a computer, or do you want to have a pre-built, like a pre-built computer? Also, should it be perfect on delivery, or are you willing to put time on it? And finally, who will you use this printer for you? Kids, grandparents, designers, engineers? So I would recommend a printer that be used in a maker that would be used in a library would be very different from a class full of 10-year-olds. There are some printers that need to be supervised and some printers that are unsupervised used. And dusty or clean environments, risk health injury are also things you need to keep in mind before you leap into purchasing a 3D printer. So now, would you guys want a 3D printer?
Yep, I would.
Yeah, so why would you want a 3D printer?
It could be useful for printing stuff you don't have.
Yeah, and it can be helpful for you to like fix things.
Yeah, like if there's a school project where you're supposed to draw a model of something, you can print it and get extra marks.
Yeah, yeah,
Or honestly, just learn about it. Like if you're interested in going for like that type of career.
yeah. So now that's the end. Do you guys have any questions? Or?